In today's video, we are talking about something a little bit unorthodox in terms of identifying swing highs and lows in a market, and specifically the pound. So this might seem a little bit unconventional, guys, a little bit odd even, but just bear with me through the end of the video and all this is going to make perfect sense. So when we look at the pound here, GBPUSD, we know that this market has been in a downtrend going all the way back here to the end of September. And so far we are seeing a bounce over the past couple of weeks, right? As the DXY breaks down from this trend line from September. So we've talked about all of this in recent videos. So clearly we are getting a breakdown of this trend as we knew we might up here around 109 to 110. I did think there was that chance of a 110.50 retest, which I'm certainly not ruling out, but we can see that this market is clearly breaking down this week. So with that, right, and this is where a lot of traders get themselves in trouble, is they look at this right here and they think, okay, the dollar's topped out. We are just going to do this, right? And maybe that is the case. However, whenever you get a lot of momentum built up like this over months, this trend does not tend to dissipate that quickly. And you can see it going all the way back here to the last time we were coming off of this level. So even though this ended up being the top here for the DXY, you can see where we got several rallies here from the DXY from these lows. And some of these were quite considerable over, a couple of weeks. Like this one here was a pretty considerable rally from the DXY going up from about 105 all the way up to about 107. And so you've got to be careful just assuming that when you get a top from a market that it is just going to, sell off immediately. Because again, back here, we had a lot of momentum that built up and you saw that through here where it took time for that to dissipate. Okay. So the point being here, I don't think that the US dollar rally is over just yet. Even if this ends up being the top, the odds of the market ranging here for a bit and putting in some decent rallies during that time is, pretty high, okay? So when we look at the pound, what I'm looking for here is the potential for a swing high up here in this area. Now, what you'll notice here on the daily time frame is that we have these two candles right here that signal the breakdown. Because if you'll remember, this back here was that time we got the daily close above this key level. However, it was holding below it on the weekly. We talked about this in videos, and you can see where we got this close below. We got follow through the next day, and then after that, we got no retrace into this area. So this up here represents an imbalance in the market, and these areas often serve as magnets for markets, okay? So this is what I'm looking for from the pound somewhere up here in this area. However, the tricky part here with identifying a swing high up here is that you've got this candle, and then you've also got this one up here, right? So you've got this massive area for the pound, and that doesn't really help you much in terms of identifying a potential turning point. Now, here's where things get a little bit unorthodox, okay? And I love to do this. We talk about this a lot in VIP, but it might seem a little bit weird to look at something like the dollar franc to identify a potential turning point for the pound. However, I'm going to show you why this can be incredibly effective for not only the pound, but also the euro. And first of all, we can see here from the dollar Swiss franc that this market has been ranging going all the way back here to 2023. And what you'll also notice is if we go all the way out here, this is essentially just one massive range going back to 2015. So you could make the case that this right here, okay, the last couple of years, this is just one range within a much broader range. Okay, so even though we could make the case that the US dollar has topped out and we're just going to do this, we could also make the case that this market is potentially bottoming down here, okay, for a move up here into the upper portion of this range. That's always a scenario whenever you're looking at a chart like this. So with that in mind, all right, let's take a look here at the daily time frame, and I'll show you the area I'm watching here for the dollar franc and why this matters for the pound. So before we get into this, let's talk about why this matters for GBPUSD. And for that, what we're going to do here, first of all, I'm going to go to a line chart, because this is going to make it a lot easier to see. We're going to take off our lines here, and we are going to invert this, all right, with an Alt-I here on TradingView, and we're going to compare this to the GBPUSD. All right, any one of these will do. Pull up a new price chart, and what you're going to notice here is that they are extremely inversely correlated, okay? Now, you do get periods over here like this where it's not exact, okay? However, for the most part, what you're going to see here is that they are nearly perfectly inversely correlated, and that's especially true during this period since September, okay? Now, if we go back here, okay, if we go back here to the dollar Swiss franc, so put our levels back on here, take off the pound, and go back to candles, all right? And also re-invert that so that we're right side up. Now, looking at the dollar Swiss franc, we know that this is very inversely correlated with the pound. So when we look at this chart here, unlike with the pound, okay, like we said, it's kind of difficult to identify where this market could top out up here in this area if it does fill in this imbalance, which I think it will. And if we look at the dollar Swiss franc, you can see where we have a very clear ascending channel. All right, so markets love symmetry, and you can see that here with this ascending channel. This ended up being the top up here for this market. Very similar, two-touch pattern like we had back here. And now you have this area right around 89.90 or so that is going to serve as key support for this market. Furthermore, if you look at the weekly time frame, you'll notice how this back here is a pivot. All right, so we have this key pivot here on the weekly. And you can see where too, we also have this November monthly FVG or fair value gap, also called an imbalance, off of this high from right back here. Okay, so you have this pocket down here that is going to be a key support area for the dollar franc. Now, there's no guarantee that we do see the market bounce from here and just continue higher, because remember, this is just a range here for this market. So the market could come down here, test this area, bounce a little bit, and then fail and sell off, in which case we are probably seeing the pound also rally from there. However, given the significance of this area, and also, like I said, the DXY, given this bullish momentum we've seen over the past few months, the likelihood of the market topping out here and just moving straight lower is pretty slim, in my opinion. So knowing that, okay, if we look here at the dollar Swiss franc, we know that this market is likely to bounce from this area down here. So that tells us a couple of things. First of all, the US dollar probably has a little bit lower to go here before we come into some demand. So that alone is helpful if you're trading the pound or the euro or any of these major currency pairs. But secondly, this area is likely to trigger a bullish reaction from this region, at least back here toward this area. And so when you consider this and you consider the fact that it is very inversely correlated to the pound, like we just looked at, then this area down here is now your barometer for a potential top on the pound. Now, the next question people will ask is, well, how do you know that where this area lines up on the pound, right? If the dollar franc comes down here, how do you know where this is going to line up on GBPUSD? And the point here is that it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you're watching the dollar Swiss franc, and you're watching it come into this area down here. And as soon as it does, you flip over to the pound and you start looking for short opportunities. Now, it doesn't mean you just blindly, ape into the market, but you're watching the dollar franc for cues on where the pound could top out. Okay, so again, a little bit unorthodox here. We are using, a different currency pair to identify a potential local top on something like the pound. And you might be asking too, why not just trade the dollar franc, right? And you could do that. You could absolutely do that. But the point here is that, in my opinion, this chart is much cleaner. Okay, the dollar franc is much cleaner than anything we are seeing on the DXY or the pound in terms of where the next turning point might be. And that's really what this comes down to. Okay, so I hope that all of that makes sense, guys. For now, though, like I said, when we look at the DXY, we look at the dollar franc, I do think the US dollar could have a bit more to go here in terms of a pullback. But again, I really want to stress the fact that this rally we've seen from the DXY going back to the end of September, this is very unlikely to top out without some relief rallies along the way. And like I said, back here, when you saw this bullish momentum build up, okay, you saw some very aggressive relief rallies before we finally saw the market top out. And there's no guarantee that we even top out up here, guys. But the point is that I don't think we just move straight lower here. Expect some aggressive relief rallies from the DXY along the way. But as always, timing is going to be critical. And that's where something like the dollar Swiss franc and this ascending channel really comes into play. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications. Don't forget to join us in VIP. Claim your 85% off lifetime access. See the link in the description of this video, or if you're on the website, click on that join VIP link. I will see you on the inside. Trade well out there, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.